A lot can happen in a week. Some of it good, some of it bad, some of it downright ugly. When faced with intriguing developments in the week's news, we turn to a rotating panel of non-experts to parse the good, the bad, and the ugly of it all. On today's panel, Houston Chronicle columnist Lisa Falkenberg, Natalie Arsenault, president of Arsenault International Consulting, and Mary Flood, legal consultant with Androvet Legal Media and Marketing. Lisa, Natalie, Mary, welcome to Houston Matters.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Panel, protesters lined Heights Boulevard's bike lane Tuesday, days after Houston Public Works removed physical protections called armadillos that separate cyclists from cars and trucks. As Houston Public Media's Dominic Anthony Walsh reported this week, Bike Houston's Joe Catrufo said the protest was designed to show that we need safe bike lanes that are separated with concrete. According to a spokesperson for Houston Mayor John Whitmire, the concrete armadillos were removed due to safety issues and disrepair in several spots, including exposed bolts. The spokesperson did not say whether the protections would be restored, but did note the bike lane will not be removed. The Federal Highway Administration says physical protectors like armadillos can reduce bicycle vehicle crashes by up to 53%. A bike lane in the Heights will stay, but may no longer have physical barriers protecting it from cars. Is this good, bad, or ugly? Lisa Falkenberg.
I think it's ugly. There's got to be a Ray Wiley Hubbard reference here somewhere. Got to go home with the armadillo, good, safe infrastructure in Houston and Heights Boulevard. I think that this whole thing is ugly, actually. The whole tiff between the mayor and the cycling community, I don't know how to resolve it, but the mayor just needs to understand that people want to walk and drive and cycle safely in this city, and sometimes that means slowing down traffic. Sometimes that means inconveniencing people, God forbid. And I think that people speaking in the cycling community need to understand that the mayor doesn't respond well, to antagonism. Few people do, but he has an even lower tolerance, I think, than a lot of people. So somebody needs to get in there and just broker a conversation, serve as a bridge to an actual conversation. I haven't talked to the mayor about this, but I just really want to understand, as somebody I know who cares about pedestrian safety, but also wants efficiency and doesn't want to make drivers too mad, what does he think? What, in his mind, what is the priority? Is it simply just letting people drive as fast as they want? I mean, that's the old Houston way. Or is there any kind of modern thinking that he has on this, that people can coexist? I personally don't agree with some of the tactics of the cyclist community. I thought that critical mass thing, where they all get together and take over lanes, was a fine form of protest until they started getting in the lane coming at you in the opposite direction. You're headed right towards somebody and you can actually hurt somebody you don't know is ahead. But anyway, this whole thing is just getting worse and worse, and this is just the latest manifestation of it. And I just wish somebody would kind of rise above it and figure out what to do to keep everybody safe.
All right. Good, bad, or ugly? Natalie Arsenault.
It's bad. It's ugly. It's definitely not good. I had a client just last year, actually, who was cycling in a bike lane, but a bike lane that didn't have any of the armadillos. And when I was going into a meeting and I walked past him, I was like, "Oh my God, what happened to your leg?" And he said that he got hit by a car. And I'm like, "Oh," while he was cycling. And I'm like, "Oh my gosh." And it was, and the person didn't even know. They didn't stop or anything, because he was guessing they probably didn't even know that they had hit him. And so they were probably texting or something, who knows, some kind of distracted driving, hit him and kept going, thought they hit like a curb or something. It's clearly dangerous. I used to cycle. My husband was deeply concerned every time I would take my bike from the west side of Houston down Briar Forest into San Felipe, into the Galleria area, to the point to where he actually just started riding in the car behind me. And I was like, oh my gosh.
He likes you.
He does like
Helicopter
me.
husband.
I know. He likes me. He likes me. But it is a concern. And, to Lisa's point, someone has to be the person who's going to approach this with a sense of maturity and stop going back and forth and tit for tat and trying to raise the bar with insults and all of that. And I would argue, while, I don't agree with the antics of the cyclist community oftentimes, and sometimes I get mad at them on the road as well, But I also know that as the mayor of a city, especially a city of the size and magnitude of Houston, you were elected as a leader. And I really hate to use that word leader because, my God, there's so few of them. But you were elected as a leader, and that means that you have to approach a situation with rising above the noise and trying to find amicable ways to meet the needs of everyone in the city to keep them safe. That's like one of the number one top priorities that you have as a mayor of a city. So it's disappointing that they're removing the armadillos, keeping the bike lanes, because he said he wasn't going to, the spokesman said they weren't going to take the bike lanes. But I'm like, if people are just going to be going 90 miles an hour down the roadways and there's no kind of barrier, then you're really setting up for everybody to have some serious issues.
Okay, good, bad, or ugly, Mary Flood.
I'm still kind of surprised by the driver who didn't notice he hit your friend. That seems a little much. But the Federal Highway Administration statistic about 53% isn't just about armadillos. It's also about posts and foliage. So there is something in between that could maybe be done. And I'm glad that they've got the green paint there because I think that's really helpful. On 43rd Street, near where I live, they've just got a white line down part of the right lane. And it is so dangerous. If I see a biker, I would never stay in that right lane. But I do want our bikers to be encouraged and to be safe. But I also want them to follow the law, which a lot of them, they don't. Yeah. They don't often. There's laws about reflectors and night lights and using your arm to tell people what you're doing, which I don't think I've ever seen. And the one that really drives me nuts is staying in your lane. I have more than once been on Memorial between like Shepherd and Westcott and had numbers of bikers come down between the cars. Mm-hmm. And one time, one woman was just giving us the finger the whole way. I'm thinking, oh, this is so charming. But I've also been downtown when the groups of them are going by and they don't pay attention to red lights. And I've had this after a game where we're backed up already and we're like 10 minutes at a stoplight because these guys are just breaking the law and having fun. So I want these bikers to be safe, but I also want the rest of us to stay safe as well.
It's almost like whatever mode of transportation we use, we should be more courteous while we're using it.
Imagine that. In all of this, cyclists are the most vulnerable. Physically, they're small, having to compete with big old things made of steel. The movement is small, having to compete with very powerful people, such as the mayor. But they all have to walk the walk or ride the ride or whatever. I mean, I remember once being in Dallas, and I saw this cyclist stop at a stop sign, and I just couldn't even believe it. I was like, what? Did that person? And it was an outlier, I'm sure. I'm sure all the cyclists in Dallas don't all stop at the stop. But just to even see that happen, somebody stop at a stop sign, was amazing. And this shouldn't be the case. So if you constantly see people flouting the law, and you constantly see this kind of antagonistic approach, it's not going to make people want to work with you. I always want to protect human bodies when they're around me. But I think maybe there's some people out there who, if they're angry at those people, won't be as careful around them, right? And you see these ghost bikes around town, and every single time I see one, I'm just like, somebody lost their life there. Some family's grieving. Some family just put a fresh, little thing of flowers over there. That should be the priority, is stopping people from dying. And then one more thing, because I think a lot of people, I did not understand this until our transportation reporter, Doug Begley, who's wonderful, at the Chronicle, explained this to me. So on Heights Boulevard, a lot of people make an issue of nobody uses that bike lane anyway. And I think Whitmire talks about that. That bike lane, nobody uses it. That's actually not the issue. Doug said, it doesn't matter if they put big steel planters in that lane. The point is to slow traffic. The point is to narrow the street and slow traffic because you've got walkers and runners and all of that. I don't think people understand that. I think they get so caught up, and I haven't seen a bike there all week. I haven't seen. But the actual point is to slow down for safety of not just cyclists, but the runners and the walkers.
Panel, Fort Bend ISD's board this week approved a sample set of Bible-infused curriculum to compare to its current lesson plans for elementary school students. As Houston Public Media's Sarah Grunow reports, the state-developed Bluebonnet learning curriculum includes biblical references in reading and language arts lessons. And while districts like Fort Bend aren't required to use it, there are financial incentives from the state if they do. So far, trustees have not voted on full adoption of the controversial curriculum, but they have heard an earful from residents. In recent days, a number spoke in opposition to it, calling it a clear violation of the Constitution's Establishment Clause, which guarantees freedom from state-sponsored religion. Among them, a woman who was removed from the public meeting after she flipped off a board member she called fascist. Fort Bend ISD is just browsing at the moment as it considers whether or how to use a Bible-infused curriculum for elementary schools. Is this good, bad, or ugly? Natalie.
Oh my gosh, it's so ugly. Like, it's deplorably ugly. So as a person who sits squarely into the Judeo-Christian spectrum, being born a Jew, raised somewhat Christian of sorts, it's unfathomable to me. I just don't get it. First of all, it's interesting to me where they're starting the curriculum at. They're starting it with children in elementary, which tells me that they really don't want their ideas challenged when they teach this concept, because most kids in elementary are there to consume information mostly. They haven't, you don't start forming persuasive papers until like third grade and stuff like that. So like kindergarten through third grade, you're just going to be taking this information in, and whatever they say is right, probably. I'm trying to figure out what the curriculum is even going to teach, because there is no agreement amongst the scholars of the religions themselves, which is why we have so many sects. We have Catholicism and Methodist and Baptist, and don't forget, the Jews and the Orthodox and the Reformist Jews. And like, there's so much out there. So like, what exactly are we going to be teaching to begin with? And then of course there's the pesky state-sponsored religion concept.
Pesky,
Oh, darn.
indeed. Pesky.
It's just so pesky. And my issue here is that we, especially in the conservative politics and things of that nature, and being a somewhat leaning conservative person, are constantly talking about the state-sponsored religions of the Middle East. And we have such a horrible, like, everyone talks about how horrible it is, and especially the Orthodox, the ones that are more Orthodox and conservative. It's so bad, it's so whatever. And then now we're trying to bring that same methodology into what we have here. And that's an issue, a huge issue, one that I don't have a solution for how we stop exactly, because we've elected people to office. We have people on our education boards and things of that nature, like in Fort Bend. It's going to pose a real threat, and to freedom, to liberty, to all the things that all the conservatives swear that they want. And I sit here day in and day out scratching my head am I the same type of, what kind of conservative? Because I thought y'all were for freedom and liberty and all the things, and it seems like you're really not. So it's horrible. We don't even have that category, but it's horrible. Okay.
All right. Good, bad, or ugly, Mary.
I agree. It's very, very ugly. I don't think I'll yell horrible because I'm worried about your ears, but there are a lot of amendments to the U.S. Constitution that I love, like the one that lets me vote despite being a woman, and the one that allowed me to vote at 18 when my classmates were getting their draft number, and jury trial. But my favorite one is the First Amendment, of course, the right to free speech, the right to freedom of press, and the freedom of religion. And the government's not supposed to establish a religion, and they're not supposed to stop free exercise of religion. And this Bluebonnet curriculum, though it gives passing reference to Islam and to Judaism, it is mostly about Christianity, and it's stuff from the Bible. And we need to be really careful here. This has been the law of the land since 1791 when they passed the Bill of Rights. And especially in Fort Bend County, where there's such a diverse population, to move like this towards one religion is really alarming. One of the things our founding fathers didn't like about the king was his attitude towards religion. He was the head of the Church of England and wanted all of his subjects to be members of the Church of England. And it's one of the things that they didn't like. They didn't mention it in the Declaration of Independence, but it's in the Bill of Rights. In the Declaration of Independence, there's some things that are especially scary right now anyway. Right after the part, this is one of my favorite parts of that declaration, and it used to be in letters outside the entrance of the Houston Post when there used to be a Houston Post. And it said, "Let facts be submitted to a candid world." And after that saying, it listed the things they didn't like about the king. And right now, we should all go back and read that, because they include that the king wanted all judges to just depend on the king's own will and opinions, that the king wanted to cut off trade for people he didn't like, that the king wanted to prosecute without a jury trial, that the king wanted to obstruct justice. Obviously, those are all things going on right here, right now. And at a time when the rule of law is being attacked and eroded and corroded, it's especially important for us to be paying attention to what our rights are and what's in the Bill of Rights, and to not just let them be eroded like this. Otherwise, I'm okay with it.
Okay, good, bad, or ugly, Lisa.
Well, Mary, if I were still editor of the Houston Chronicle opinion section, I would assign you to write that op-ed, because I think that's a really good perspective. I will say it's not necessarily, it's not good or bad in this particular instance that they're looking at it. I think we shouldn't be afraid of information, and I think it's free. They're just looking. That's what they claim, right? But I would hope that they look, and this community that's wanting this sees that they're looking, and there's an exploration, and there's skepticism, and then in the end they see that this is not, talk about constitutionality. I mean, basically the state is providing financial incentive ultimately if they use this thing. So that's certainly, seems unconstitutional to me. But the curriculum itself, from what I've read, is not good. Some things, as Natalie was saying, are debated or aren't accurate or seem to be evangelizing. I was talking with a friend the other day, and I was surprised because he's rather on the left. He and his wife are on the left spectrum, but at some point they were homeschooling their child who was having trouble in school. And at some point they had done all their homework and they found a curriculum they liked, and these people are not Christian, and they ended up using this curriculum that came from a Christian organization. He was like, man, it was a good curriculum. It was so thorough, and actually it didn't have a lot of trying to convert anybody or, any twisting of what they saw as factual history. It was very comprehensive. So apparently you can do it. There are some out there that are fair, that are actually trying to do what some of these policyholders say is their intent, and that is for us to understand historically, what are you going to say, mythologically, historically, who the leaders were, and the thinkers were who influenced a lot of the ideas and the laws that the U.S. has. We study Greek mythology, study a lot of other thinkers and faith leaders, and so they want to make sure that Christianity is well represented. I don't really see a dearth of information there that was presented. I don't feel like I left elementary school lacking in any knowledge. I mean, I went to Sunday school and church, but I remember discussing certain facets of the Bible in school. And I think there's a way to do this, but the state of Texas, the State Board of Education, is not going about this in a way that they should. And I don't think it would meet constitutional muster.
If what Lisa is saying, like how Lisa posed it all, it sounds lovely.
I didn't mean it to sound lovely. I'm just trying to present another side of things.
It's true, no.
To make this interesting.
But it's like, you don't have to be a Christian to go to a Christian school, right? Like people go to Christian schools all the time who are not Christian, who have absolutely no religious beliefs necessarily at all. And the curriculum is fine, and it's not inundated with Christianity. I guess my chief concern here is, to Lisa's point, we do study Greek mythology and all these other things in school. And, I've definitely read my fair share of like Dante's Inferno and all the things. But they are events in a curriculum. They are not the curriculum. So that's my concern. I guess my concern is how interwoven is this material going to be in the curriculum? But I guess that's why they're investigating.
I'm not willing to be as calm about this as either of you two. There are people, including on our Supreme Court, who would like to see us move away from a secular government towards a sort of Christian-based Shiite law type thing, and this is one of the moves. And I don't trust the folks at the state, certainly, and many of the boards of education. And I don't even trust all the folks on the Supreme Court right now, though I have my hopes about two of them starting to care about the country over party. But I think this is one of the many places where there's this creeping movement towards taking apart, and some places it's not creeping, which is D.C., taking apart the government as it exists and making it something that can be molded into a Christian society and a less secular and less government-controlled society and more religion-controlled. And I'm worried about this.
And the main problem is most of those people don't even know what Christianity is.
Well,
so
yeah.
it's like, we say Christian society. It's like,
Well-
who are these people who even understand, or anyway,
Obviously.
even have a respect and make an effort to follow Christ's teachings? None of these people in Washington are doing that.
It's not the
correct.
Christ teaching stuff. It's not behaving like Jesus stuff. It's,
Yes.
It's much scarier.
Yeah,
to me,
so we need to
very
come up with
scary.
another word for these people. I guess Christian nationalist is the word that gets used, but people are confused about that,
Yeah.
So there needs to be another word.
There should be another word. I agree.
I actually have some, but I don't think I can use them.
Use them on the radio.
NPR is already being looked at skeptically by
they're a
by
little
the federal government.
Lisa Falkenberg is a columnist with the Houston Chronicle. Natalie Arsenault is president of Arsenault International Consulting. And Mary Flood is a legal consultant with Androvet Legal Media and Marketing. Lisa, Natalie, Mary, thank you very much.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Craig.